This is a film that demands action. It reveals that we may have been living with a lethal hidden terror, which could affect us all. At its heart is a deadly new phenomenon. One that until very recently, scientists refused to believe even existed. But it may already have led to the death of millions. Tonight, we examine for the first time the power of what scientists are calling Joyestung Toddeschmertz. Literally, joyous killing death pain. October 12, 2002. Police are beginning to notice a dramatic increase in the number of random acts of self-inflicted lethal injuries. In London, England, freelance analyst James Wentworth was hard at work analysing. There were no outward signs that anything was amiss. But before his work colleagues could react, James was overcome with an uncontrollable need to attract attention. Police and lethal psychologists were baffled. But for Dr. Brian Travis, a specialist at the Insane Psychopathology Department of the University of Cambridge Neuroscience Centre, it was just another in a deadly long list of pointlessly random acts of lethal self-harm that he had been chronicling as part of his lethal research into the link between pain and deadly amusement.
This wasn't the first time that something like this had happened. Thousands of similar incidents had been recorded on CCTV.
But this was not just a random increase in bizarre incidents. There was something far more lethal, terrifying, and sinister at work.
When we plotted the locations of each of the incidents, what we found was that there was a pattern.
Although the initial pattern looked vaguely familiar to Travis, the full global horror was only just becoming clear. It was a global plague. If this was true, Travis needed more data. He needed to test his theory in a controlled environment. Travis had to see whether there was an intrinsic link between his studies of pain and amusement and this new outbreak. Flemingsberg once had an everyday existence. A senior burrito designer from Helsinki, he liked golf. But his life was inexplicably transformed into a living nightmare as the disease worked its deadly way through his body, racking him with an insatiable desire for self-harm in the name of amusement.
Well, we managed to isolate one of these cases, a subject who hadn't yet damaged himself physically. And you can see from his general demeanour the severity of his pathology.
Last December, Dr. Travis allowed us almost exclusive access to his latest series of experiments, where he was observing the neurological response of Flemingsberg under semi-controlled conditions. The experiments were designed to test Flemingsberg's response to other people's pain. Travis sourced a steady supply of volunteers, who, for the purposes of double-blind testing, could not be informed about the nature of the experiments.
And what were you doing to the people in this experiment?
Well, we were mostly exposing them to high voltages.
The ECG results clearly show the level of Flemingsberg's response. Terrifying, he finds this situation extremely amusing. The first deceptively simple experiment gave Travis the proof he needed. Proof that individuals infected by the plague were putting their own lives and those of others at lethal risk in a desperate, deadly attempt to make people laugh. Some people might have considered this a form of schadenfreude, but Travis knew it was more than this. And it already had a name. Joyestung Toddeschmertz. Literally, joyous killing death pain. Now he had identified the pathological basis, Travis worked tirelessly to track the origins of the disease, and eventually his scientific guessing techniques narrowed the source down to a handful of suspects, his favorite being the African fighting shrew. From here it appears that it spread, firstly through bees, then chickens, llamas, through a reverse mutation into cats, wildebeest, before leaping into golden retrievers. Travis wanted to observe Flemingsberg's response to varied types of stimuli on the volunteer. Firstly, he observed Flemingsberg's response when he was anticipating the delivery of an electric shock to the volunteer. Next, he wanted to see what Flemingsberg's response would be when the type of stimuli was unexpected. Travis's work had previously garnered him massive awards, but now his work was being scrutinized by an increasingly skeptical scientific community.
Sitten siellä on sellainen vähän suunnilleen tuolta kuultumista sellainen.
Yet even the skeptics were astounded by the level of Travis's dedication when he allowed himself to be put in place of the volunteer to test the subject's reaction to the pain of an authority figure. But there was more to come. Travis went further with a potentially life-threatening stimuli combination: authority and unexpectedness. And repetition. Despite taking such personal risks, Travis was often asked about the potential impact on his volunteers.
Was there concern in these early stages?
Well, we definitely weren't concerned at this point. Later on, we started to increase the severity of the stimuli, certainly.
Travis's last experiment was to be his most controversial. The infected subject was placed in a containment cell and his restraints removed. Then, the volunteer was introduced to the cell and his interactions with the subject recorded. Horrifically, neither the volunteer, Flemingsberg, nor the computer holding the experimental data survived the ensuing lethal frenzy. With no direct conclusions and 2 deaths on his hands, Travis was universally discredited and shortly afterwards asked to resign from the institute. But that isn't the end of this extraordinary story. A month after this film was made, terrifying evidence came to light to suggest not only that he was correct, but that Travis himself may have become infected by the terrifying and deadly disease he was the first to discover. We leave you to decide. Is this the suicidal act of a discredited scientist on the edge, or the death of a genius literally consumed by his own work? No matter what conclusions you draw from what you have seen, it is absolutely certain that this disease, Joyestung Toddeschmertz, if it exists, is both lethal and deadly.